Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we're on the final book in the Rochester series by Skye Warren. Now, if you haven't listened to the first two books in the series, those reviews are going to be listed down below in the description section. Once you finish those reviews, come and join us as we dive into book 3, which is called Best Kept Secret. We pick right up where we left off, Emily saying, "Hello, Jane." And then Jane says, "Hello, Emily." Girl is freaking out on the inside, of course. Does not understand why Emily is here. Um, she now realizes, of course, who she saw walking on the beach at night. It was a real woman, not a ghost. So she's got a lot of things floating through her mind. So she says she's going to go ahead and get out of here. She's going to leave her here in her apartment. And of course, Emily's like, "You're not going anywhere." Because she's thinking, like, okay, I'm going to get out of here. When I get outside, I can call Noah and he can get here to pick me up. But Emily pulls out a gun and tells her she's not going anywhere. She's like, "You're going to help me." So, of course, Jane is like, "How am I going to help you? Like, I'm a nobody, you know?" And she doesn't say at that point how Jane's going to help her. Jane decides to say to her, "How could you leave your daughter?" This, of course, is going to get Emily upset because she's like, "You don't know anything about what happened." So we get a little snippet from Emily, and she says that the day on the boat, what happened was Rice and Joe were at the dock and they were arguing. Apparently, her brother and Joe had business together, and she didn't go into detail about what the argument was about, but apparently she said it was the type of argument that ends partnerships. And so Joe pulled out a gun and shot Rice in the head. And so when she saw that, she jumped in the water because she knew her own brother at that point was going to take her out as well. Now, this could be a true story. Feels kind of finicky. So Jane is like, "Okay, well, you need to talk to Bo. And she's just kind of like, Bo's not really going to do anything. And she's still kind of on that thing about it being Bo's fault because he sent her away. And I'm not too big with blaming Bo for that. Bo was wrong for screwing her because she was married, but it was not his job to save you. Especially if you didn't tell him everything that was going on. And she didn't. It's not like she went to him and said, he's, you know, hurting me. You didn't say that. So then she tells Jane, he cares about you. So he'll believe you. So basically, she wants Jane to go, with her to tell the story because of how he feels about Jane. He'll buy it. So she even made the comment, he broke his rules for you and stuff like that. Um, but Jane is kind of like, okay, at this point, the girl's got a gun on her. And she's gonna help. It's Jane, okay? So she's gonna help. And then she gets a phone call, and it's by our boy Rochester. Emily tells her to answer it, and she aims that gun a little bit higher towards her head. So we switch to Rochester's POV, and he's calling like basically 3 times. He's called, and eventually Jane picks up, and he's trying to warn her about Emily being alive. And he's saying, we got footage, da 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 da, right? Tell her to lock your doors. If you got a lock on your bedroom, make sure you use it, that type of thing. Emily's mouthing to Jane, asks how Paige is doing. And so this is hard for her to even ask because it was hard for her to leave. But she's trying to make Rochester not feel bad about sending her away because, again, she's not trying to allude to the fact that Emily is standing in front of her. So when they get off the phone, we switch back to Jane, and she, is like, "What do you want from me? Like, what do you want me to do?" And she says again, you know, no one's listening to me, but if you come back, then they'll listen. And so she decides she's going to go back with Emily. We get a little bit more story. We find out that Rice had a lot of dirty money, and that's what she's been living off all this time. So he apparently was making a lot of money from double crossing Joe. Joe found out about it. That's the reason for the argument. That's the reason he took him out. So she said she jumped in the water again because she could see in his eyes that he was going to take her out next. If both, but then again, I'm trying to think. So if both of them are gone, so if Rice is dead, if Emily's dead, well, technically Joe's her uncle, and I guess so is Rochester. So yeah, they probably would have gave the baby because he got all the money. But she knew that, and she knew like he was gonna use that to probably try and get the girl to get access to the money, since Joe probably double crossed him, stole a lot of money from him. Um, so she hasn't, even though she has access to the dirty money, she hasn't been like using it. Um, she's been surviving, she says, on like canned beans and something else. I forget what she said, but that's what she's been surviving on. She hasn't been trying to spend the money because she's not trying to draw attention to herself. She brings up the whole thing again about Rochester not believing her. She calls him Bo, but I like to call him Rochester. Um, so again, she knew that Joe used to up when they were in school together. So again, why do you think that he would take the side of somebody that he has hated his whole life? Like this, it just doesn't make sense to me of why she is so paranoid that Bo's not going to help her. That's the part that I don't get. But then again, you went and you married his brother, and now y'all, you slept together, and he didn't react the way you thought. So you thought once you fucked him, he was going to be like, "Oh, come away with me. I will take you and we can go live happily after." But because that wasn't his response was, "This is wrong. You should go back to Rice." Now all of a sudden he's the most, unreliable. And that's why I'm like, girl, bye. So she's very jumpy. Jane describes her as being very unstable. Um, I'm not fully convinced that she's telling the truth at this point. I'm just not, because she appears, the way Jane describes her, is very shifty. So I don't know. So the fact that you would use a gun to like try and make her come with you, it's like, if you've been stalking around these people all this time, what makes you think you gotta, you know what I'm saying? Like that doesn't make sense to me. Like Jane doesn't require you to get a gun for you to help her. I'm just saying. That's the part that threw me for a loop, and that's what makes me kind of like, I don't know if I fully believe her. She could be telling the truth, but I just don't know if I fully believe her. So she takes them to the airport, but they don't go the normal way. They go like this back way to a private runway, and there's a PJ. So see, again, I'm kind of like, okay, if you say you ain't been spending no money, why did you come here on a PJ? I'm just saying. So When they get on there again, Jane's already decided she's going to help her. She's told her that, you know, she feels the woman's desperate. She needs help. She wants what's best for Paige. Paige loves and misses her mother. So for her, that's the best thing. So however she can facilitate that reunion, she's going to help do that. And, but yeah, again, I don't trust the hoe. So then, poor Rochester, he's trying to make grilled cheese. He's burning it up. He's tried so many times. Paige is kind of like, it's okay. I'm just not even that hungry. They're both missing Jane tremendously. Paige asks, why did she leave? You know, then she asked him, are you going to leave? And he's like, I'm not leaving. She's like, well, Jane said that, but she still did. And they have this whole little discussion. And then guess who pops up? Our girl Jane. Paige, of course, is shocked. He winds up taking Jane in the hall and talk to her. He says, you know, you shouldn't have come back here. It's not safe. She's like, yes, I should. Like, I'm safer here. And it takes everything in him not to kiss her. Of course, his ass still winds up kissing the girl. Oh, with all this passion, they have a little brief conversation. She goes to talk to Paige. Paige is mad at her, but she tells Paige, you know, I missed you every moment, you know. And then eventually she breaks and hugs her. And she, of course, was happy to have her back. She starts talking about, you know, her beach days and all this type of stuff. So then it's time for a bath. He finally gets the grilled cheese right, so Paige was able to eat something. So Paige yells, you know, I want Jane to give me my bath. So Jane gives her a bath, puts her to bed, and then Jane and Rochester talk, and she tells Rochester what happened. He made a comment. He said, how did he say it? He said, M could have come to me. Well, of course she didn't like that because, you know, that's that, you know, nickname, that familiarity. It's like, you know. And this, of course, hurts Jane. And that's her whole fear, right? That this is who he truly loves. And that once he gets the opportunity, like, he's going to go back to her. Like, that's happening. So she tells him about what happened with the shooting thing and all that. He doesn't want her to leave. He's like, you know, you're not leaving again. It's just not possible for me to do it. He's like, you know, what if I can't protect you? She's pretty much like, you know, my thing is you give me the option. I make the choice. You know, it's on me. I make the choice. And I'm choosing to stay here. And, you know, that's just what it is. Then he grabs her hair. He bites her. He's trying to get her to say it's too much, that she can't take it. So after he does something, he'll say, is this enough? And she'll say no. He smacks her ass. He does it quite a few times. She has a tear coming out of her eye, but she still won't say it's too much. He starts fingering her. Not waiting for her to get ready or anything. Still, she will not say it. So he's trying to push her away, and he's trying to push her to her limit, and she's trying to get some type of connection, and neither one of them, none of it's working, you know. I'm like, both of y'all are psychotic. Both of you. So everything that he's giving her, she's taking it. So then they wind up switching roles where she's in control. She winds up sucking him off. She toys with him at first, drives him absolutely crazy, and then eventually he comes down her throat. But his resolve is, he's just as crazy. You know, he's crazy. There is something wrong with him because he knows he can't be without her anymore. But it's like, but why are you trying to push somebody away that you know you need? Like, what is wrong? I don't get it. So Rochester and Mateo, they're gonna go meet up with Emily. Her cabin's probably like 10 miles away. So they get there, and Mateo is a lot more suspicious and defensive than Rochester is. And Rochester's willing to hear Emily out, you know. She tells him basically the same thing. Um, Rochester again tells her, you could have reached out. I would have helped. And again, I don't see why she thought he wouldn't help her, you know? You wanted him to choose you after fucking one night. That's not the same as thinking someone won't be there for you. That's a totally different ball game. Again, Mateo's suspicious. He feels like some stuff is missing from this story. Um, Rochester tells her, I'll try, because she needs him basically to go above the law, which would be going to the DA, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, be DA. He doesn't want to just give Paige back. The idea of losing her is pretty difficult for him at this point. He does think of her as his kid. We then switch to the POV of Emily Rochester. So Emily's left in the room with Mateo because Rochester's gone outside to make a couple phone calls. Mateo, of course, looking at her suspicious. And he says again, like, you could have came to either one of us. And she's like, I couldn't trust anybody. And she said, no, he said to her, you knew your brother and your husband were doing shady shit and you were covering for them. She, of course, is like, I didn't know what they were up to. I had no idea. And he's like, did you not really have an idea or did you not want to have an idea? Like, he's getting closer into her space. She is jumpy and he raises his hand up to see how she reacts. She flinches. And then he goes, oh, Rice clearly, did a real, beating on you. Like, he did really mess you up. And then we get a confession from Mateo. He used to have a thing for Emily. So throughout school, Emily never really noticed him. Emily saw him flirt with everybody. She was like, hell, you even flirted with guys. So she just saw him as a playboy, and she only had eyes for Rochester. So he was close enough to her that he could have kissed her, but she winds up pushing him away. It's the most heat she's felt in a long time. And so then Mateo says, well, maybe this isn't the right time. And she says it's never going to be the right time. But I think they did. Hold on. I think they did kiss. Mateo did kiss her. And she felt it in her bones. I'm sorry. I said that so wrong. They did kiss and felt the electricity. Now, I will say, I think it's a little weird that you trying to kiss this woman after what's going on. And it kind of seems like you just like to fuck behind your homeboy. Right? Because he wanted Jane. He knew, he could tell that something was going on between James and Rochester. But yet, he still tried to talk to Jane as well. And now, the person you've known that you knew he had such a crush on or loved or whatever for so long, now we find out you apparently had a crush on her. So it just sounds like he liked to fuck behind his homeboy. I could be wrong, but that's just what it sounds like. Again, it could be genuine, but that is how he's coming across. So then we switch back to Jane's POV. She, of course, is worried, wondering how Rochester felt when he first saw Emily. And so while they're laying in bed together, she says to him, basically she asks that question, like, how did you feel when you saw her? And he says, all I could think about was getting back to you. That's it, and making sure, like, you never leave me again. And they talked about the whole thing with the child going back to Emily. He's like, of course I'm going to miss her. It's going to be really hard for me. He was like, but I cannot lose you again. That's just not an option. And she, of course, is like, asking, you're not going to send me away. And he's like, no, like, pretty much you can hang that up. Can't do that ever again. So Jane and him, of course, have this whole night of passion. Both of them are still wrestling with how effed up everything is and how this is going to, how everything's going to play out, right? Jane has the fear Emily's gonna, he's gonna go back to Emily, and he of course is afraid Jane's gonna leave, and he tries to settle her fears, um, but it it's kind of like if something's stuck in your brain, it's kind of hard to get that shit out. So I get it. So then he says about going to the prosecutor. Maybe it is the prosecutor, not the DA. Maybe it is the prosecutor. Yeah, it's the prosecutor. I said it so wrong earlier. Um, and apparently he went to school with her. The girl had a crush on him, but they never did anything. And so he's supposed to go and have a conversation with her. And again, he wants to convince her she's the only person he wants is Jane. So then of course, they wind up fucking again. Rochester goes to see Lauren Michaels. That's the prosecutor, or DA. I don't know. It's it's one of them. They go to her office. They have a conversation. He tells her what's going down. She, of course, is like, "Are you sure Emily's being truthful?" Because there's no secret about their relationship from high school, and how clouded his judgment could possibly be because of this. And is there any proof of anything? And he says he has a diary, which should kind of establish that Rice, was abusive. And he says, I'm sure she probably wrote about her brother in there too. And so that could be some type of proof showing something. And so then Michelle, is her name Michelle? No, Laura. Laura alludes to the fact that there is already an ongoing investigation into Joe's conduct. So that's good. They already know he's fishy. So that hopefully should help this go pretty quick. Jane and Paige are on the beach. Paige is making her sandcastles, and then Paige looks over Jane's shoulder. She sees a stranger. Someone's coming towards them, and it is Noah. Noah's looking pretty pissed. She takes Noah to the side to talk to him, kind of tell him what happened. He's fuming. He's like, you haven't been answering your phone, all this type of stuff. That's messed up. And here's my thing. Okay, yeah, it is, right? But a lot of times, you already know she's not like one of those people that's like connected to her phone all the time. She's not that type of person. So, yes, could she have dropped him a text message? Absolutely, right? She didn't. That is not why you fucking got on that plane. You got on that plane because you wanted to see who and what it was that was keeping her away from you. That's just the truth. That's just the honest to fucking God truth. So I just think his whole thing, I don't feel like it fully comes from this place of like, I'm concerned about you. I'm not saying he's not concerned. It just feels like he's upset that she's around these rich people, that a rich person has gotten her. I feel like that's his main issue, because she doesn't feel anything for him. Because let's be very clear, he could have sent a message that said, hey, let me know you're okay. Drop me a message and let me know you're okay. But for you to hop on a whole ass fucking plane, get a whole ass motel, and he apparently ain't got no money, right? He apparently pretty broke. You gonna go through all of this. I think it honestly was you just wanted to see what it was that was pulling her away from you. And again, you coming up there rah rah rah, do you really think that's gonna help the matter? Like, let's say in this crazy dream world you think that this person could possibly have an affection for you. Do you really think that you coming there being a disruptance is really going to help them make a decision that's going to be in your favor? Hell to the no. So again, could she have answered her phone? Should she have at least text him and let him know, once she got back, hey, I'm going, yes, she could have. But here's the problem. Her brain is consumed by Rochester. That and Paige, that's what consumes her. So guess what? Noah's not going to be a priority. Unfortunately, she's a priority for Noah. And whenever you got that type of a situation, somebody going to be fucked. Because somebody's going to get the short end of the stick because the other person don't give a shit, you know? So, to an extent, I feel bad for him, and at the same time, no, I don't really feel bad for him. I don't really like him. I really don't, because he has the ability to make her feel really bad about herself when he says certain things to her, and I just find that cruel. So I'm not a Noah fan by any means at all. So she tells him he apparently got a motel across the way. She's like, okay, we'll talk and all this type of stuff. He agrees for them to talk later. She goes back. Paige is kind of like, why are you upset? Like, who was that? And she also says, if that's your friend, she's like, but you don't look at him the way you look at Uncle Bo. We switch back to Bo's POV. And while they're at the table, Paige, of course, says something about the man that was mad at Jane on the beach. So Rochester lights up like, who are you talking about? And Jane says very calmly, Noah came to see me. We talked, and we'll talk about this later. So then she gives Paige a bath, gets her to sleep, and then her and Rochester talk, and she explains, he came X, Y, and Z. And Rochester has that fear because this is someone who knows her, right? So that's always can feel like a threat to someone. Then as she's talking, she's like, what are you, just like my sugar daddy? Because he's like, I'll pay for you to go to college and all this type of stuff. Because she's saying there's still things I want to do, X, Y, and Z. And so he's like, I would never stop you from doing anything that you wanted to do, but I would help you if I can help you. Why wouldn't I try and make the load lighter for you? So she winds up deciding that she's going to go and stay in her own bed tonight. Of course, this is really difficult for Rochester. He's having a hard time going to sleep. He's wishing she's going to come to his room, but she never does. We switch back to Emily's POV. She's alone. She hears footsteps. She gets her gun out, and it's Mateo. And he, of course, is like, what are you going to do, shoot me? She's like, listen, she's been in flight or fight mode. Or is it fight or flight? However you want to say it. She's been that way for a long time. So they have a little conversation. He does eventually wind up telling her that he does believe her. They, of course, still have this sexual chemistry between the two of them. He tells her, he just wanted to check on her, make sure she's okay. He winds up leaving. She's back to being alone. And I did forget to say before, she was outside before she heard the sound. She was thinking about the meeting she had with the DA, or was it prosecutor? I don't know. We'll go with DA. I don't know. And the questioning that they had given to her, it was really intense, but she did understand that it did have to be that way because, end of the day, they're trying to get to the damn truth. So it's going to be a little rough. So Bo and Jane the next day go down to the courthouse to speak with Laura Michaels as well as Internal Affairs. And, these people are asking them questions about the case. They haven't finished their argument from the night before. They didn't say anything to each other in the car on the way to the courthouse. And so after a few questions, they pretty much wind up launching into their own little fight because they were asking about Causey, accusing her of the fire. When he had found out Rochester had changed his will to include her. She didn't know anything about it. So now they're talking about the whole money aspect. And Rochester kind of blew up at her and winds up saying, you can take the money. You can take everything. I don't care. I love you. She, of course, is all happy now because she's been wanting to hear that this whole time. She has massive insecurities, and she feels like because of who she is, she shouldn't be with someone like him. Like he should be with someone like Emily or even the Lauren Michaels woman. Like they fit with him, and that's the whole problem. She has low self esteem and she doesn't see value in herself. Um, but he loves her, she loves him. They wind up having this makeout sesh in front of these people. So the people leave out and they come back and they're like, okay, can we continue? Or are you two just going to keep making out? You know? Um, but I think what irks me is that he has money, right? You knew that when you came to work for him that he had money. And you're being mad at him for the very thing that you already knew he had. And that's the part that I don't understand. I understand that there's a complexity when it comes to money and how people view things, and I get that, but it's just kind of like you're demonizing him because he has money. And that bullshit comes from Noah, because Noah has such a harsh, thought when it comes to rich folks and how they are, on top of the fact she hasn't been dealt the greatest hand in life, and I can kind of understand her having a complex as well. But I feel like most of that is that bullshit that Noah spews to her, right? And so it's like you're getting mad at him. Bitch, when you fucked him, you knew he had money. You still fucked him. So if he wants to give you shit, he's going to want to give you shit. And it's not making you a prostitute, but then you're changing it into it like you feel like a prostitute if he does something for you. It's just like he doesn't think you're after his money. He pretty much figured out real quick you didn't want his shit, right? You weren't trying to sell him down the river for a quick story. He figured that out pretty quickly. But you're still stuck on this because you feel inadequate compared to him. Because you've put him on a pedestal. He's X, Y, and Z, right? And you don't have that, so you're not worthy of him. So instead of dealing with your own fuckery, you turn it on him like he's doing something wrong. That's the part that ticks me off with her. And I'm like, girl, stop. Jane goes to talk to Noah at his motel. And he starts up the whole thing with about reaching out and all this type of stuff. She tells him about the part about with Emily having a gun and all this type of stuff. And he, of course, freaks out. You could have been killed, blah, 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 blah. She lets him know what her decision is, that she wants to stay. She tells him, she loves him like a brother, but she can tell this is probably going to be the last time that they're going to see each other. She is not going back to Houston, even though she said she'll try and visit. It feels like there's a finality in this meeting. And then he asked her, is it about the money? Her reason for choosing him. And she says to him, she thought about lying to him to spare his feelings, but she chose to tell the truth. She says, no, I'm in love with him. That's it, And he waits for her outside when her Uber comes. She offered, like, we can take you to the airport, X, Y, and Z, so they can spend some more time with each other. He's just like, no, don't worry about it. I'll get the next one. I think it's probably for the best, this clean break. He's in love with her. He can't just be a friend to her. And he hasn't done anything, I doubt, to kind of separate himself from that emotion. I doubt he dates. I think his focus is very much Jane. And that's it. And so all that does is just compound the emotion. And I think this is for the best. It would have been nice if they could have remained friends. Some people are able to go, you know what? That's not what we're going to be, and that's fine. But they're good with the friendship. But some people, especially when that's their main focus, is this one person, I think deep down maybe they thought something was going to change. I think that's where his brain was. And he realizes, like, finally, it's never going to change. She's never going to come and be with me, and I'm going to be the decision. I'm going to be the choice. And so I think for that case, it is the best, because I feel like he's going to do what he's been doing, which is lashing out at her. and saying very hurtful things to her because he knows how to hurt her. He knows her past. So I think it's for the best. Again, I don't like Noah. I don't. I don't think he's a greater person as we think. I think he stepped in probably when they were younger and things like that. Again, because he has this emotion. He has this strong emotion for her. But it's like clearly it's not reciprocated. And she can't make herself love him. She can't make herself want to be with him. She thought about trying to do that and it felt miserable to her, and she shouldn't have to. You know, he should be able to respect the fact that what she wants is to keep him in her life as a friend, but if that's not enough for him, then she got to do what she got to do. I don't like him, so I was like, good riddance. We switch back to Rochester's POV. He had to go and meet with the FBI and stuff, and so he's tired of doing this crap. He's ready for this to be over. So he comes home. Marjorie, the innkeeper, is kind of, he's like, where's Paige? Where's Jane? And she says, well, Paige went with Mateo to get some ice cream, and Jane went out. And he's like, went out? What? Where did she go? And she says, oh, she didn't say, where. So he's starting to freak out. So right when Rochester's about to go out, Jane's coming in. He, of course, is like, where were you? And she's like, I went to see Noah. He feels a surge of jealousy. He, of course, is like, what's going on? And no, it probably wasn't the safest thing to do with everything we know that's going on, right? Joe Causey's still out there on the loose. And, wasn't probably the safest thing, but I don't think that's what this is about. He's thinking about the possibility that she maybe went to, like, fuck him goodbye. And she, of course, realizes this is where his mind is going. And she's like, no. So they go upstairs and they have this heart fuck. And that, calms them down. Well, calms Rochester down. Now, Rochester's still stupid to me for this because the girl has said, and she hasn't shown anything, that there's something more with Noah. But I think because he knows that Noah is in love with her, it's a little difficult for him to reconcile that she doesn't feel anything. But this is very possible, that someone could love someone and the other person feels nothing. It's very possible. Happens a lot. But that, on top of the fact of what happened with his brother, and his brother, basically scooping in and stealing the woman he wanted, he has massive trust issues. On top of the fact he know what he did, right? He know he did something grimy. So he has trust issues. Got it. But I'm like, again, nothing that girl has done makes you think she wants Noah in any shape, form, or fashion. They are eating dinner. Paige barely, because she had a bunch of ice cream. So she barely touched her grilled cheese sandwich. She's about to go upstairs when there's this loud banging on the door saying police. And of course, it's Joe Causey. So Rochester knows, I better open this door because if I don't, dude's just going to bust it down. So he opens the door. Joe comes in. He's like, I have a warrant. Looks deranged, crazy. He's like, you're both under arrest. So I'm confused. I'm like, why the fuck would they send one person to arrest two people? And normally when they serve warrants, isn't it normally at least 2 plus? So I'm just kind of like, this is very fishy. So Rochester's in full fight mode, right? He's ready to fight. He's ready to take this guy out. And Jane is screaming at him to stop because at this point, he could say, you're resisting, shoot you, that's it. And all this is going to happen in front of Paige, right? So he finally calms down, But then when Joe's like, I'm going to arrest Jane, he loses it again. And this time he's like lunging to kill, right? But then the door bursts open. It's Emily. Paige sees her and is like, Mommy, and runs. And then she asks Joe, you came here alone? And he said, we have unfinished business. Emily and Paige hug. They're having their reunion. Joe and Bo are fighting in the kitchen. So Emily is like, this has got to end. And so she, kisses Paige and tell Jane to watch her. And Jane's like, no, don't do it. But she's ready for this to be over. She has probably come to the resolve. She's probably about to die. But she's going to be okay with it knowing that her kid's going to be safe. So she goes in the kitchen and she says to Joe, I'll go with you, which distracts him. And it allows Rochester to like push him out. And when he pushes him outside, surrounded by FBI agents, so many lights. Joe's trying to figure out, should I run? What should I do? Ain't shit you could do. It's fucking surrounded, So then Paige, of course, runs back to her mother. Cute moment to read. Of course, Jane is looking at Emily, Paige, and Bo, aka Mr. Rochester, and feels like that's the perfect family. And he sees her look because he can read her mind. He knows. He reaches out to her for her to come to him. And then she's kind of okay, but that thought is still in the back of her head. I'm like, damn, that's a dramatic ass evening. Ooh. We switch back to Bo's POV. Chaotic scene, FBI everywhere. Marjorie comes up. She, of course, is like, what's going on? He tells him about Joe and all this type of stuff. He's been arrested, blah, 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 blah. She sees Emily. She goes to hug her. Emily's a little flustered, not necessarily used to people like grabbing on her, for a while. I mean, she hugged her daughter, but I think, adult other people is kind of like, back up. So then Paige runs to Jane, and she's been stuck to Jane ever since. And this is painful for Emily to see. You can tell that's hard. But then again, you've been gone. She's developed a bond with somebody else. Someone has, they've made her, a safe space. And so then eventually the FBI leaves. They take the footage. They're going to transfer it to their system. Lauren Michaels, she comes by, says, they have enough to try and keep him in jail until the trial. That's going to take a while because they got to find a jury. And basically everyone knows him there. So that's going to be kind of difficult as well. Everyone goes inside, including Emily. She, of course, is looking kind of crazy because Paige is still stuck over there with Jane. So eventually Jane tells Paige, you can go sit with your mommy. It's okay. So she runs over there. And then, again, Jane sees the perfect family. It's Emily, Boo, Paige, all on one couch. And she decides she is gonna go upstairs and she's gonna start packing. They look perfect together. It looks like the family that should be. She doesn't know where she's gonna go. She knows she's not going back to Houston. That doesn't feel like her home anymore. She knows she can't stay here. So she calls an Uber. She's gonna go to the airport and she's gonna figure out where she wants to go from there. So we switch to Emily's POV, and she winds up taking Paige to bed. But when she sees Jane leave, she's thinking that when Jane goes upstairs, she's thinking this is like some unspoken thing between Jane and Bo, and that they're probably ready for her to leave. But of course, he's like, tells her, you can stay. And so we find out a lot when she takes Paige upstairs. And they have their bath time, and she tucks her into sleep. And we find out Paige knew about the beatings. She knew her father was bad. So she wasn't keeping anything from her. The girl knew it all. And she asked, is that why he's dead? Because he hurt you? And she says, no, he's dead because of an accident. But she wouldn't go into the whole thing about, the uncle killing him and stuff like that. She left that for now. She's now thinking she should leave and let Jane, Bo, and Paige remain a family. Um, and I'm just like, this is hilarious. Like how both people, I mean, they're trying to do these selfless acts, and they're just the wrong decision. So Paige is talking to her and like, we're gonna do sandcastles on the beach, you and me and Jane. And I'm like, the kids got the right idea. Like, I don't see why it can't be all of you. You say you don't want Bo, you don't feel nothing for Bo, Bo don't feel nothing for you. Like, I'm like, what's the problem? So Rochester goes up to Jane's room, sees her packing. Of course, he is like, what the hell is going on? She's like, I'm leaving. He's like, no, you're not. She's like, yes, I am. You don't need me anymore. And she was like, I can't stand to watch you with her. And he's like, again, I don't want her. I love you. And he tells her, he's like, it's gonna rip me apart when Paige leaves. I think of her like a daughter. And Jane says, well, she might be your daughter. And he says, no, I did a DNA test. She's not my kid. And so then, of course, they have this whole hard fuck. He writes, how he likes to write messages on her clit with his tongue. And he writes, I only want you. I love you and all this type of stuff. So she's good now. The next morning, Emily's downstairs. She's making eggs. Paige is eating them up. They all go outside so they can talk. Paige goes and does her sandcastles, honey, because she ain't trying to really hear no conversation. um, Jane and Rochester both say, Emily, she should be with you. You know, and Emily was like, well, I was gonna say if you guys thought it was best for her to be with you, I would support it. And they're like, no, you're her mother. She needs to be with you. And Emily tells him, like, I'm not leaving town. Like, I'm going to find a place in Even Cape, you know, and I wouldn't take her away. This is all she knows. She's like, I'm just going to find a place nearby. But I want you guys to be a part of her growing up. And again, I don't act why they were acting as if this was not an option. You know what I mean? Like, this was just so incredibly far-fetched. So, of course, Bo's happy. Jane's happy. Paige comes and gives him a hug. She sees Emily and Jane crying, and she's thinking something's wrong. And they're like, no, we're not sad. We're happy. Jane applies to a bunch of schools, even some back in Texas, but she decides not to do any in Texas. She's going to go online with the school in Maine. She wants to be close to Paige. And so, like, Paige comes by every day. She's going to school. She's meeting friends. So Paige is doing really well. Her first year of school, she didn't feel like she was really missing out, with the parties and stuff like that, because she needs steadiness, and Rochester provides that for her. She makes the dean's list, and she, of course, felt like she didn't deserve it. And she equates it to her earning something. It's like, to her, to earn it, you have to suffer for it. And he kind of is like, you don't have to suffer for everything that's good in your life. you know a lot of things will, people assume you got to go through the ringer. You got to suffer massively before you can get to anything good. And I personally, I don't think it should be that way all the time. I think people make it that way. I think people try and test people, and it doesn't require that all the time. And he's like, you studied hard. You deserve this. And so, again, she's got issues. The coach house has been rebuilt. That's where Emily lives with Paige. It's not very far away from the new house that Rochester built for him and Jane. We find out that they've had a baby because Rochester comes downstairs and he's holding a baby. The baby's name is Sebastian, but they call him Bastion. Um, Paige absolutely adores him, treats him like it's her little brother. They, they're a family. Maybe a little unconventional, but it's still a family. So she's extremely happy. She has to give a speech to a group home, and she's nervous about it, but Rochester reads her speech, and it's great. It's talking about the whole 3% of foster kids, finishing college and things like that, and just a bunch of, things to just give them hope. So we don't hear about Noah. He's not mentioned anymore, so I'm assuming that really was the end of their friendship, and I'm not, mad about that. Um, he couldn't be happy for her. I just don't think he was capable of it. Maybe he felt too much. I don't know. Uh, it was a season in her life, maybe a long season, but maybe he took her to where he could, and then that was the extent of how far the friendship could go. You know what I mean? And sometimes friendships end, and so you got to be able to accept that. So it looks like they're both doing well. As far as we know, she is. How he's doing, don't know and really don't care because I don't like him. Do not like that freaking character. um, so she's happy. Um, I like this. Now the way it differs from the original Jane Eyre is that in that one, when that fire occurred, Rochester, I think he lost an eye and his leg was fucked up like permanently, and also he was really married to the woman that was staying in the attic. It was actually his wife. So he had gone down to, like, I don't know, Caribbean somewhere, and he had gotten this wife, and she was crazy, and he didn't know it until after he had already married her, because I do that whole bull crap, because I think the original movie is set in like the 1800s, early 1900s, so a lot of that, arranged shit. So he didn't know she was crazy until it was too late. He already had her, so he just puts her in the attic. So she's the one that comes down and, creeps Jane out. She sets a fire to Jane's room. She tries to kill Jane. It's a whole mess. And then he tried to marry Jane without telling Jane about that woman, but her brother interrupted the wedding and said this wedding can't happen because he's already married. And the child in that book was actually his, but it was a child that he had with a woman in, like, France. She was like a singer or something like that, and she didn't want to take care of the kid, so he had to take the child. And that's in the original movie. So I mean, I liked how she, Skye Warren played with it, kept some of the main things, but changed a lot of things around. Sometimes classics can be redone and they're fun. Sometimes they shouldn't be bothered. But I like this one. This one was good. So let me know what you guys think. Drop down in the comment section and let me know. If you have any suggestions, put those in the comments as well. If you are in the market for a beautiful notebook or journal, I will have those links available down below in the description section. Make sure you like and subscribe and share. And as always, I truly do thank you all for your support, and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.